Hi, this is Mr. West, and today I'm doing a Khan Academy tutorial video on the unit circle. This was requested by the Chatha family, so I appreciate the request. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to give some pointers on the unit circle to start. The question for question 1 is points A, B, and C are plotted on the unit circle. Which of the coordinates is equal to sine of 200? A lot to digest there. Let's go ahead and break down some of the critical components. So first I want to draw your attention to this part of the screen. First, I want you guys to know that anytime you see that symbol that looks like a circle with a line through it, that's theta, and that means an angle, okay? Now, second thing, you'll notice here that when we're talking about the unit circle, as we go around, as we start here, that's the starting point right here on this x-axis in the positive direction, that's 0 degrees. And then as we move around the circle, we move counterclockwise. So the first step would be 90 degrees, that's on the y-axis. Then we have 180, that's on the negative side of the x-axis, 270, and then we can get back to 360. So that's kind of the angle measures that we're talking about. That's super important. That's kind of like the basis of everything else with the unit circle. Second thing, when we're talking about sine, cosine, and tangent, we need to understand those trig identities. So that all originates with this right here. As we have a triangle, and I have one drawn there with the angle measure theta, represented by that angle, we have 3 sides always with the triangle. It's the hypotenuse, the opposite side, and the adjacent side. The hypotenuse is always the longest side of the triangle, and the opposite and adjacent side are always right next to this 90-degree angle right here. So there's always a 90-degree angle when we're talking about trig identities, and the opposite and the adjacent side always compose that angle. Okay, so when we're talking about the sine of theta, the sine of an angle, really what we're talking about is the opposite side, the ratio of the opposite side to the hypotenuse. So this opposite side is related to sine. Okay, so here is that opposite side, and that's related to sine. And we're going to use that later. I don't want to give it away just yet. And then the cosine is the adjacent over the hypotenuse. The adjacent side, that's what ADJ stands for, over the hypotenuse, and that's just the ratio from the adjacent side to the hypotenuse equals cosine. So we're talking about this horizontal component, that horizontal side right there, okay? So just like that. Okay, now, how does this relate to our problem? Well, what we're trying to figure out is we're trying to figure out which of the coordinates is equal to sine of 200, okay? Now, first off, we probably should find out where is 200 degrees. So let me erase some unneeded things right now. I shouldn't have erased that. Oh well. So hopefully you guys remember some of those angle measures. But 200 degrees, we already know that this is 0, this is 90, this is 180. So 200 degrees is just going to be a little bit beyond 180. Actually, 40 degrees more will take us to 200 degrees. So we know B is the location of where 200 degrees is. Okay, so that gives us some indication of what we're looking at. So we can ignore A. We can ignore C. Okay, those two are out. So that helps us. Just knowing the degrees helps us. Now we're trying to understand sine of 200. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw my triangle like I did over here. Okay, so I'm going to draw my triangle. First, I'm going to draw the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse goes right to that point. Okay, now I need to draw my adjacent side and opposite side to connect it to make a 90-degree angle and to make it a right triangle. So my opposite side is going to be this one, and my adjacent side always touches that central angle, and that I'm going to draw in red. Okay, so just like that. So there I go. I got my opposite side. I'm going to label it opposite, and I got my adjacent side, and we already know my hypotenuse. So if I'm talking about the sine, again, I'm talking about the ratio of the opposite side to the hypotenuse. So which is equal to the sine of 200? Well, that's going to correspond to which of the following. So it gives some good hints here. So x coordinate of A, well, we already know A and C are out. So we're looking at either the x coordinate of point B or the y coordinate of point B. This is the final coordinate step, and once you understand this, I think you guys can do the rest of this Khan Academy. So if we're talking about the sine, we are talking about this measure, let's see, right here, okay? So how far down it goes. The adjacent side, I'm trying to eliminate some stuff, make it easier for you guys to see. The the adjacent side clearly lands on this x-coordinate right here, okay? So the x-coordinate is controlled by this adjacent side. So if you're thinking x-coordinate, we are thinking the cosine, okay? Because the cosine controls that adjacent side. That adjacent side and the cosine go together, so the x-coordinate is controlled by that. This y-coordinate is determined by this opposite side. How far down it goes is controlled by the opposite side. So really, we're looking at a location for our y-coordinate with the cosine. Okay, so again, this opposite side tells us how far down we go, and that corresponds to this location on the y-axis. So really, the y-coordinate controls the sine. I meant to put this, which is the opposite side. Okay, a little sloppy. Sorry about that. Had a lot to write. So we're looking at the y-coordinate of point B is controlled by sine, and that should be good. All right, moving on to the next question. I hope we're going to do this more, so if you're confused on that, I think we're going to solidify it a little bit later. So for each point on the unit circle, select the angle that corresponds to it. This is actually one of the easier questions. So we already talked about how this is 0 degrees, 90 degrees, 180, and then 270. So that just knowing that is going to help us understand all these other angles. So let's take a look at A. We already know that A is between 0 and 90 and closer to 0, and there's only one choice that fits that description, and it's 20 degrees. Let's take a look at B. B is almost to 270, so bigger than 180. That's going to be 250. And then C is almost to not 0, but technically 360, because if we make a full revolution, that's 360. So it's not quite to 360, but close. Let's take a look at our options. 340 is going to be the only one that fits that description. And there we go. Next question. Okay, what is the value of the x-coordinate of point A? Okay, so it tells us a few things. One, it tells us that we got this 20-degree angle from this 90-degree point. Just don't think this is a 20-degree angle. It's really not. It's really 90 plus 20. So really this is 110 degrees that we're talking about here. And that should be an option down here, and it is. Take a look. So we have 20 degrees, which is wrong. It's not 20. We have 200, which 200 would be all the way over here. That's 200. Okay, and 20 degrees would be right here. So it's clearly not those options. So we're already down to 110 because it's 90 plus 20. Okay, keep that in mind. Now we're talking about, is it the x-coordinate or y-coordinate? Well, it says the x-coordinate. And as we're talking about these trig identities, we know the x-coordinate is controlled by this adjacent side. Remember, the adjacent side touches this central angle where theta is formed. So theta is this one right here. And as we draw a right triangle to connect it, we see that the opposite side goes up. So this goes in the y direction. And this cosine, this adjacent side, goes left, which is the x direction. So really what we're looking at is the cosine of 110 degrees, because that controls our x-coordinate. So we're going to go down here, cosine 110, x-coordinate, and we're good. We're on to our last question. Points A, B, and C are plotted on the unit circle. Which of the coordinates is equal to cosine of 180? Okay, we need to find 180 first. You guys should know that by now. We have 0, 90, 180. So we're talking about point C. All our other ones are bad. So we're just focused on E and F for multiple choice. Which of the coordinates is equal to cosine of 180? Okay, we're talking about cosine. So cosine, we're talking about the, which side? Cosine, and then we're talking about sine. Sine controls the y-coordinate. And then cosine controls the x-coordinate. Okay, and I just want to draw a picture. You could probably pick the correct answer just from this, but I just want to show you a picture to solidify this idea. Okay, so I'm going to draw my adjacent side, and as you can see, this clearly is just right along the x-axis. So that is going to be our x value, and it's actually going to be a negative x value. Okay, in that direction, the x value is negative, but that's not needed for this. But future things, just know that that's the negative x direction. And then our y value, technically it'd be up a little bit. Because it's right on 180, that y value is 0. Okay, because it's right on the x-axis. Okay, but that's technically our opposite side, and our opposite side is non-existent in this case, so our y value would be 0. Okay, so that's just something to keep in mind. And as we drew our line, it would be just right along that adjacent side. But I always had math teachers draw like a super skinny triangle like this, and then they would just kind of collapse it down until it's all the way flat like I've drawn right here. So it's really not even a triangle, but as we talked about, the cosine relates to the x-coordinate. We're already talking about C, so we're talking about option E, and we should be good. So I hope this was a helpful video. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to check out other videos I have on geometry. I have tons of videos on geometry. If you need any additional videos, make sure to leave a comment, and I'll be happy to get to that. Either way, I look forward to seeing you next time right here on Wes Explains Best.